All right, live from Dog Lake Brewery in Fort Worth, Texas, it's time once again for You Can't Brew That on Television. Now here are your hosts, Brewmeisters Kyle and Bono. Hey guys.
Good evening, Rich, and good evening, Internet. Welcome to the award-winning Dog Lake Brewery for another exciting episode of You Can't Brew That on Television. We are your hosts. I am the Reverend Ryan Bono.
Big event.
The Big Event is my Jersey Shore name.
Yeah, there's no D's.
I'm sorry, just a Big Event.
Big event.
Is
we call him for short. So, and I'm Kyle LaPointe, Brewmeister, Brew Dog, whatever you want to call me.
Micro event.
Micro event?
Not non-event.
Okay, there you go. I'm a nano event.
And we are coming to you live, as we do every Monday, where we will help you bridge the gap between Beer Snob and Frat Boy.
All right.
Kyle, what are we doing tonight?
We're going to talk about the Iron Mash competition. Once again, we've talked about it dozens of times on here, but
we've been pretty excited about the Iron Mash for a really long time.
Yeah, we have.
The regular viewers know that, and we're pretty excited about it tonight.
We're going to have some more trivia. We're going to go that route.
Trivia's always a good time.
Trivia's fun. We're going to have...
we have some pretty exciting beer here tonight, actually. I'd kind of like to talk about these beers.
Let's talk about it.
This is one of 3 beers that we're going to be trying over the next few weeks that were brought to us by a friend of mine who visited China. This particular beer, I believe, is brewed in Shanghai, and it is called Snow Beer. I'm guessing that this is China's version of Bud Ice.
Right.
Let
me see what it says. I read Chinese.
Yeah, he does. It's a little-known talent.
Yeah, this is definitely... they call this Red Dog Ice.
Red Dog Ice.
Red Dog Ice, and actually right here it says, "Don't let the blue and silver fool you."
Oh,
and,
no,
and
no.
It does. Yeah.
No, actually it says right here, "Don't drink the yellow snow beer."
Okay, don't drink the yellow snow beer.
That's what it says. Don't drink the yellow snow beer.
It definitely says snow beer, which is what's cluing us in on the ice.
Yeah. So yeah, it actually says snow beer.
It says
English,
like a whole bunch of other things in Chinese lettering.
Yeah,
and then snow beer.
Snow beer, and then we've got some Dogfish Head Theobroma, which is an ale brewed based off an ancient Mesoamerican recipe. And as you can guess, if you didn't know, this is from those nut jobs over at Dogfish Head.
We've had a few Dogfish Head beers over the days, and man, they're just always fantastic. They're an experience.
Always fantastic. Always a really neat experience to try Dogfish Head Ale.
And that's, I'll just have to say, this is courtesy of your wife.
This is courtesy of my wife.
Teddy, we appreciate this beer. One of the few people who can go into a beer store and say, I don't think Kyle and Bono have had this.
Right?
You know?
And yeah, she does have a fairly good idea of what we have and have not had, which I think better than Arson, because when she first brought it up, you thought that I think we both
I thought I may had it, you know.
We had it, and then once we really started looking at it, it occurred to us that we had not.
Yeah, it was not something that was in our beer repertoire.
So once again, she knows us better than we know ourselves.
Bad thing for our wives to know us better than they know
I think
ourselves.
So we're ready to go here. Oh, actually, if we have time, just one more thing. If we have time, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Brewing Bowl.
Brewing Bowl.
So
that's something we're going to talk about.
That. Kyle, why don't you bust out some trivia while I'm pouring us some drink the yellow snow beer.
This last Iron Mash was the 9th annual Iron Mash. And so my question to you is, who is the active cap and hair member, active brewing cap and hair member, who won the first Iron Mash?
Oh, I'm going to have to go with James Lalande on that. Well, yeah, I'm going to go with James Lalande.
Okay. I'll go ahead, and this is a simple answer. You know, a lot of people probably aren't going to go guessing things out here. James has only been brewing about 7 years, maybe, something like that. So no, it's not James. You may know this guy from a previous interview we've had on this show.
John Shank.
John Shank.
I briefly thought about John, but for some reason I thought he had said he had never won one.
No, he said he won the first one and has never gotten.
No, he never won one since. I forgot the first half of that line.
And the guy who won with him was Rob. He's still involved. He was walking around. He's the bigger guy, you crazy guy, you know.
Yeah.
He
Big Crazy Rob.
Yeah, guy with World Series tickets, by the way.
Oh, nice.
3 seats to every World Series game.
I kind of thought he was missing.
I really like the aroma that I mean, it smells like it was poured directly out of a skunk's butt.
Yeah, I was saying that same thing.
It's like it's got like a perfume to it, something that you just don't get in every beer.
And once again, folks, and we've talked about this before on the show, is you notice the crystal clear, just white bottle we've got going on here, which is why I selected this beer first. I was about 90% certain it would be skunked out.
Oh, yeah.
And the other two that I got were in cans, so a very, very low probability of that. Just, again, guys, when you get a beer with a white glass, there's a pretty high probability.
Not the flavor I would expect.
No,
that's weird.
It's kind of ricey, but there's some European stuff in there, I think.
Yeah, it almost tastes like it could be an ale yeast. Like it's fruity. Do you get any of that fruitiness of it?
Yeah,
mean, everybody at home got your China yellow snow beer, didn't you?
Go drink your don't drink the yellow snow beer, and it kind of sits. The fruitiness kind of sits after you drink it.
Yeah, that's really awkward beer.
It's very awkward.
It really tastes like they gave it one of the Americans will drink this one.
No, they don't sell it here.
I know, but the Americans in China, right? I mean.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's why they put the words in, and it was probably one of those poorly translated things where they're like, oh, they really like their ice beer in America, like 10 years ago. So we'll make an ice beer, except the guy who translated it didn't understand that ice and snow were two different words.
And I guess the girl who brought it back for me, who grew up in China but has lived here for about a decade, I guess she's just been here long enough to not know the difference.
Yeah. But no, that's fun. It's good to get to try a beer that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah,
and there's probably horrible things in there.
And like I said, we've got 2 more Chinese beers to try. Then I have a friend who brought us back some beer from Hungary. So we're going to be trying that probably later this season, or I think most likely we'll be able to get to it till
hungry for
next
more?
season. It will definitely leave us hungry for more. We might even Yeah, I think it is going to be very good, actually.
Hungarians can make some okay beer.
Well, they really.
This is not the worst thing we've ever drank on the show, by the way.
But when you go there, they're always begging you to drink their beer. They really Budapest you about it. Budapester you. So, I mean, that can happen.
I got nothing.
All right.
You stopped me on that one.
I've got him stumped for the first time ever. All right, so we're going to keep drinking our Chinese beer. Let's talk about some Iron Mash.
Let's talk about some Iron Mash.
There were some wonderful beers at the Iron Mash this year. Last year we were very unimpressed.
With our beer in particular, but with others as well.
Our beer was pretty bad.
Yeah, we missed a few rules. We discussed it before. We didn't quite understand what was going on. We had never brewed in that excessive a heat. We didn't understand that the water potential, basically you're not going to be able to get as much water out there to cool your beer. And you've got some limitations that if you know about, it's much easier to perform in those conditions. This year we were a little more prepared, but at the same time going against 23 other fantastic brewing people. And I say brewing people, really it's more like 46 other fantastic brewing people.
Yeah, 23 other teams.
Because everybody pairs up with another fantastic brewer. I mean, some of the combinations out there were like, oh my gosh. Some of those brewers have like half a dozen steins between the two brewers, and steins being the Blue Bonnet award for the best beer in a category.
And for those of you who don't remember us discussing the Blue Bonnet during season 0,
to win a stein is
Blue Bonnet is the largest homebrew competition globally, right? The world's largest homebrew
world's
competition.
largest single site homebrew competition.
So when you're winning a stein there, you're pretty much elite.
Yeah.
I mean, your stuff could quite easily be sold commercially.
And I went to the GABF this year, and even they're at the point to where if there are a certain number of beers in a category, they understand the fact that you're just probably not going to win.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
So there are several categories in that contest, in the Blue Bonnet, where there are more entries in that than in the GABF with professional brewers.
Right.
So, it's tough competition.
Yeah.
But anyway, we
did all right.
We did all right. We thought we made a pretty good beer. We talked about it. In fact, we bottled it live.
Bottled it live here on You Can't Brew That on Television.
Which was a fun event. We had a good time. Got to show everybody how our bottling process works.
Got a lot of positive reviews on that episode, by the way. We're thinking about doing more demonstrations in the future. So any part of the brewing process, I'm going to abruptly switch
Yeah,
topics
that's
for just a
awesome, yeah.
moment. Any part of the brewing process that you would like to see demonstrated, let us know. And if we can't do it live, we'll at least video ourselves doing it and play the video during
Or,
one
you
of
know,
our
and maybe
episodes.
not even videotape ourselves doing it, but actually videotape ourselves doing the beer process that you want to see, because that would be much more pleasant.
Right. Yeah,
for
that's what I.
everybody to
Yeah,
watch.
that's kind of what I was thinking along those same lines.
Right.
Too. You know that also. Anyway, back to the Iron Mash. Yeah. So we brewed that live here on the show for you, the viewing audience.
We bottled it here. Then we presented John Shank at the end of season 0.
Yeah.
He
Talked
wa-
a lot about Iron Mash during the season finale.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Got to talk about it, and he was the first
First in studio guest.
in studio guest, first winner of the Iron Mash.
Which really shows how much we like this competition. It's really, really neat competition. So unique and a lot of fun.
We knew we made a good beer, good enough to place, but
We've been talking about it for weeks. They know that we liked our beer.
and we got through the 3rd place, and we got through the 2nd place, and we were like, oh man, well, better luck next year.
We'll get
Until
our
they
scores.
said
First place, was it the Southern Brown?
this is Southern English Brown.
And my wife actually described it best. She thought we had made a Southern Brown, and her ears kind of perked up. And she said she was absolutely positive we made a Southern Brown when both of us scooted to the edge of our seats and leaned over the table.
What did
and
you
our
say?
eyes got wide as saucers.
So needless to say, we appreciate your support as the 2010 Iron Mash champions. We got our little
our
paddles.
trophies. The
Yeah, they're fun.
they're
They're custom carved. I'm going to put mine the same way where you can actually read the Iron Mash written on there.
They've got some holes in them so that when you hit, it really just sinks right into the skin. It feels very painful.
I thought you were going to say it feels really good, and I was going to be
Is that-
very upset.
Trying it on the studio audience.
Yeah, bad idea.
Yeah, actually,
Studio
yeah.
audience
If you
says,
stay
please
tuned,
don't try it on
if you
us.
stay tuned for the post show, we'll be trying it on the studio audience.
But you can see they got this is a traditional mash paddle style of a board where it's got the holes in it, and that's because you're able to actually take the mash paddle and stir it through, and the grains will go through those holes that are in the paddle, and so you're actually mixing it up a lot more than if you actually just had a straight stirring paddle.
And
We also got these fantastic trophies, these glass trophies here that are pretty cool.
And I don't think we can reiterate enough. There were some very good beers last night.
Yeah, and it was a tough competition. We were shocked that we won.
When you get to that level where there's so many good beers, there's a tremendous element of luck involved, I think.
There's that too. There's timing and there's luck, but
Any of probably 7 beers I can think of off the top of my head could have won.
I got it down on my list of the 20-something beers that were there, because I don't think everybody brought their beer, because there were
I
a
don't
few
think
that were
that they
bad.
did, yeah.
So I think it was 21 or 22 beers that made it made it good enough to where they were going to bring it. And of those beers, I got it down to about 6 that I thought were
I had
award-winning.
to say, yeah, we differed on the
There was one beer that
on
you
the,
liked.
on the English mild that I absolutely loved.
Yeah, and I think that was the one that won third. What? No. Excuse me. That was third was another Cap and Hair member, which was Carl King.
Crap and Hair swept it, didn't we?
No, we didn't sweep it. Horseman of the Apocalypse got the Horseman of the Apocalypse got the 2nd place.
Oh, okay. We've got some requests for beer from the studio audience, so I'm going to disappear for just a minute.
So, yeah, we had a really good time at the event. They had the People's Choice Award, which also went to the 2nd place team. And then there wasn't a 2nd place that was actually given as far as the People's Choice Award goes, but we found out later, as far as the voting process goes, that the 3rd place would have gotten the 2nd place of a People's Choice had there been one. So, it was pretty good the way the People's Choice were, but, we adopt the philosophy of we're going to pick the best beer that's not ours. We liked our beer, but I would say I liked the 3rd place beer, which is what Bono and I ended up both voting for. We liked that beer the best. It was Carl King, and again, I forget who Carl brewed with, but that was a fantastic beer. They made a beer to guard, just
Very, very good beer.
which is a hard beer to make in general, and they made it in the throes of this competition.
Calling their shot in the 105-degree heat.
And so it's amazing. That's what we say. This competition is a true test of first ability of a brewer, because you have to be able to brew, and then also the creativity of a brewer. So I think in this case, our creativity kind of took us over the top. Our ability brought us into the spectrum, and I think our creativity and how we got the pepper into the beer worked pretty well. So,
speaking of pepper and beer, I got something in the nose out of this I'd never smelled before.
Chocolate?
In beer. There's definitely chocolate in there. There's ancho chilies in there that are really popping out of the aroma.
I get it now that you said that.
Yeah. I couldn't place it.
It's like spicy chocolate.
Yeah, I couldn't place it, but as soon
Is
as
this
I read
mole
it,
beer?
It's essentially, I was just going to say, it's essentially, I think we all three thought of it at the same time. This is essentially mole sauce beer. It is chocolate chili powder, which makes a lot of sense because, as I mentioned earlier, this is based on an ancient Mesoamerican style, which the Dogfish Head guys do. They dig up vessels, ancient vessels that have remnants of beer on the inside. They scrape out the decay, the decayed beer, analyze what was in it, and try their best to recreate the recipe, and that's what they've done here.
And if they can't find any vessels, and they find like a preserved mummy that may have some on the inside of its urinal tract,
They just tear it apart.
right? And they
hit it with
scrape
sledgehammers.
from the inside of the urinal tract, and that's how they get the exact recipe for
I
their
thought
beer.
that's how they got Keystone.
Oh, that could be.
Yeah,
Maybe I was
Keystone.
thinking wrong.
That's where Keystone came from.
So, anyway, tell me your story that you told me the other day from this book you're reading. I got a kick out of this. I thought this was great.
Yeah, and we haven't done a book review in a long time on this show, and it's something I think I'm definitely going to do after this current read. It's kind of a tragic, like a beer tragedy that occurred during the Industrial Revolution. Those of you unfamiliar with the Industrial Revolution, everybody was, actually it was kind of like Texas. Everybody was obsessed with doing everything as big as they possibly could, like to the point of being completely ridiculous.
That's fun.
Like the Death Star Stadium, for instance.
Yeah.
And so there's actually a somewhat famous picture of the British, I believe he was like the Minister of Industry or something, and he's standing in a shipyard in front of a chain that each link in the chain is the size of him. So things were just getting out of proportionally huge. And the brewing industry was no different, where one brewery, I want to say it was the Whitbread Brewery in London, built a fermenting vessel that was so big that before they moved it into production, they hosted a dinner party.
It was Schoolcraft, by the way. That was the second one.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was Schoolie. I didn't want to say anything, and then like Schoolie be like, "That wasn't me." But
They actually
great brewers, both of
they
them.
actually hosted a dinner party inside of this enormous brewing vessel and invited 100 people. So another brewery decided to outdo them, held a dinner party in their brewing vessel where they fit 200 people. And this was a really big accomplishment for the first few months until the beer vat went bad and broke when it had millions of pints of beer inside of it. Several dozen people were killed in the initial crush of beer flooding out of this incredibly huge vessel. So now, so several people died initially just because of the sheer volume of beer hitting their heads.
So people were killed in the flow of beer.
Several more people died in the mad rush to run to the gutters and drink as much free beer as you possibly could, as it was flowing through the gutters of London, of all places, which I'd rather drink beer out of a gutter in New Orleans. So people are just like killing each other trying to drink free beer. Several more people died of alcohol poisoning, either from swimming in an alcoholic drink or from just drinking too much on the spot. And many people had to be hospitalized. It's for drowning,
For alcohol poisoning.
whatever. So they brought these people to a hospital. They reeked of beer. Most of them had been swimming in beer. The rest had been drinking it. And the patients that were already in the hospital rioted because they thought that other patients were being allowed to have beer and they weren't.
And it was a beer-free environment, right?
Yeah,
so
it
they're
was
like,
a
"Whoa,
beer-free
whoa,
environment.
whoa,
Yeah, so they went crazy, rioted. Several people died in the riot. Now you have people dying the initial rush of beer, dying from alcohol poisoning, dying from killing each other trying to drink beer,
dying
from rioting in the hospital. So they
from drowning in the gutters.
So they bring all these bodies to a house. Just to have somewhere to lay them all out.
Their morgues at the time didn't have room for 100 people or 80 people or whatever the death count had gotten to right now.
Might have.
It was like a Steven Seagal movie. I mean, the death count was just rising. Right?
Yeah, it was Victorian England, so the morgues already were overflowing.
Yeah.
Cremated some and they burned for days.
Yeah. And so they brought them all to this house, and hundreds of people went to the house. It was a curiosity more than anything. Because people were being killed by a tidal wave of beer. And so many people flooded into this house that the house itself collapsed and killed like 2 or 3 dozen more people.
So the house that everybody's going to view the dead bodies to recognize their relatives that have died in this mass flood of beer.
They went to see the dead and joined them.
And to me...
Tragic, but just like a fascinating series of events.
And I look at this from a workers' comp standpoint, and I can just say,
OSHA.
oh man, OSHA would be all over this company. You know, I mean, not only the citations from OSHA, but as well as the workers' comp lawsuits and the criminal negligence lawsuits. I mean, you're talking every one of these deaths. You can pretty much say the people that worked for the brewery would be to the tune of $1 to $5 million per person. Today's dollars, and you're talking all of the people that died outside of that. I'd say up until the point where they put them in a house and everybody died in there, pretty much would be like 5 to 15. No, they would be 5 to 15 $1 million a piece. No, I'd say the people that the house fell apart really have no foundation for a case.
Yeah, that's true. So, wow, was that just to set that up? Is that all you were doing there? Wow. Anyway, I'm learning a lot of really neat stuff from this book, and I'm gonna try not to.
What's the name of the book?
What is
that's
the name
a very
of the
good
book?
question, studio audience. The name of the book is "Man Walks into a Pub: A Sociable History of Beer," and it kind of.
I got another question for you. When your wife asks you something at the house, do you refer to her as studio audience?
No, I ignore her. A true story. Ask her. I don't even remember where I was going with my other fun beer. Oh, Britons. The British have become somewhat renowned lately for just getting utterly sloshed, just like disgustingly, ridiculously trashed, and just like passing out wherever they are, like in parks or in the street or wherever. And apparently this is just sort of in their blood. In fact, in medieval England, when a woman would get pregnant, she would immediately, as soon as she figured out she was pregnant, she would brew a batch of beer so that it would be ready in time for her and the midwife to be utterly sloshed while she was giving birth.
That's the first epidural.
There it is, a medieval epidural.
So a day when you're pregnant is actually good for you. So I guess if you don't drink the last 9 days before you have a baby, you're sad.
Yeah,
you got to make up for it.
Yeah.
So
it all averages out.
Right? Law of averages.
Law of averages.
You want to discuss?
Let's talk about grain.
Let's talk about the grain bill.
Last episode, we spent a great deal of time discussing the grain bill for our Brew and Bowl Scotch Ale.
Scotch Ale, yeah.
And one of the things that we discovered is that there's a dozen different ways to do the grain bill for Scotch Ale.
Just like any beer. You can go as incredibly
like
complex, or you can stay close and you can change by the brewing process.
Right, and specifically in a beer of moderate color, and we discussed how traditionally the Scots used almost exclusively pale beer, and then the grains they couldn't get to malt, they would roast. And being very thrifty, they would toss those roasted grains in rather than waste them, and that's what gives Scotch ales distinctively tan, kind of copperish color.
Yeah, so basically what he's saying is like, okay, you're going through the process and the grains are actually sprouting. Some of them don't sprout; they're just dead. They're worthless grains, and you're not going to get any sugar from them. So what they did was they cooked them, or burnt them actually, and added the really dark.
And the result would be similar to taking a beer the color of Budweiser and tossing in a few drops of Guinness.
Yeah.
Where those drops of Guinness would diffuse throughout the beer and tint the entire thing.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
I do too. And then we talked about how today a lot of your commercial brewers will either just use caramelized wheat for the brown color, or one of them actually only uses
I would think they'd use caramelized
caramelized malt, thank you. And then one brewer actually uses strictly pale malt and then just adds caramel food coloring to his beer.
Yeah. So, you can get the flavors that you want out of a Scotch ale without doing anything other than just a base grain. And so we've got a couple of suggestions out there. One of them being from James Leland, a great brewer.
Guy who really knows his stuff.
Yeah, knows a lot of stuff, and he was when we we had a large studio audience here, and we decided what style.
He was the driving force, I think. The Scotch ale was his idea, wasn't it?
I'm not sure. It may be. It was.
Yeah, it was.
But it took off like wildfire.
Yeah,
everybody in the room
loved
was, like, hey, this is a good way to go. So, I agree. I think it's a great beer, and it's a great example of how you can brew simply but still have complex flavors. And we actually brewed a beer, and some of our studio audience here tonight tried our decoction mash wheat beer that we made.
Got some pretty decent reviews out of it.
And they liked it. It's a complex beer, but they say, well, look at it. It still looks a little dark from a Budweiser, but meanwhile, it's got a lot of subtle good tastes. So, they like that, and that's common, and you get that with the Scotch ale. You can get a slightly dark beer, but you're going to get really, really complex flavor out of what is really a pretty pale beer.
Yeah, it really is. But again, the flavor can be so deep and so rich just by using these various levels of malt. And also, you're going to get a lot of kettle caramelization, which is another way I think that one particular brewer, I think he's definitely caramelizing in the kettle.
Well, he kettled, or he caramel,
but that's probably
kettleized, caramelized.
Is
there a word for that?
Caramelized.
Caramelized. I knew there was something out there.
He caramelizes. But
he brews for 2 hours.
What I'm willing to bet is that he gets the flavor he wants out of that, but not the color, and so he just drops some caramel food coloring in there just to finish the job.
Which is probably like poison, tasty food coloring.
So what about? I know what I've decided. I don't know about you. I think the way to go is, and I tend to be very predictable in this sense. I think the way to go is the traditional way.
Let's go traditional.
Where we're so. And let's, in a few weeks, we're going to bust down our home brewing program, and we're going to show you how it works. So for now, let's just say that we're going to use an overwhelming majority of pale malt. We're going to use a little bit of caramel. Let's start with some, like maybe some caramel 10, maybe some caramel 20, something like that.
Yep.
And then just a little bit of roast.
I think you could even go a little different, go like a caramel 80 or a caramel 120, and just use a little bit.
Yeah, and then just use a little bit of roast to really add that complex flavor and really boost that color.
Yeah, and so what we'll do at that point is we'll do a decoction mash.
Yeah.
We'll go through it'll be a longer mash process, which could be bad for the brewing bowl, but we'll make sure and get started in the right way. Maybe you and I will wake up early or stay up all night.
Yeah, I know we're going to be here.
Not a bad idea. We could just leave some hot water in the...
New Year's Eve, we can just go straight from partying to brewing.
That's true. Well, and what I was going to say was our mash tun, we can preheat the water and put it in there the night before.
Yeah, prime the tun the night before. I like
the
that
night before. Because one of the things that always takes us a while is priming the mash tun.
Mill the grains. Actually, let's mill the grains on the show.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be a good demonstration.
Are we going to be on during that time, or are we taking off the entire time between the shows? Is this our kickback, or are we going to have one kickback?
Actually, yeah. Our season finale, by the way, is the Monday before Thanksgiving, which I believe is the 22nd of November. So let's mill the grains and maybe just show that as a video, like maybe during the mash or something.
That's a good idea. We can do a short clip video.
Like some of the stuff we're doing leading up to it, because the boil's gonna be 2 hours.
You guys
are
always welcome to pop on for a special episode or anything. The network.
There you go. We can advertise, as a special episode, and we'll just do some of that stuff. And
thank you very much, Rich.
We can grind. While the water's boiling, because quite literally, when you're priming a mash tun, you're watching the water boil. Yeah. That's what you're trying to do.
Which is a lot of fun.
I've never had more fun in my life than watching water boil with Bono in the morning.
We'll let that one sink in for a minute. So we've got a grain bill.
We've got
trophies.
We've talked about.
We've had some really skunky beer.
Hey.
And we've had some really great. I don't know about you, but I'm enjoying that. I mean, it's very unusual. The alcohol warmth is kind of a kick.
This is very, very nice.
It's a nice beer.
I could see why they made this, back in medieval Germany.
Yeah, medieval Germany.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
that's where Quetzalcoatl was hanging out.
Right.
The Mayans actually were probably drinking this when they said the world was going to end. So and how can we trust them?
It was going to end in, is it 2012 or so?
Ish. So,
My sources actually
from
say
all
that they
us-
miscalculated that.
Yeah, that's actually kind of.
Report
Yeah,
came
that's
out
not
last
happening.
week said.
Oh, really?
Never mind. Apocalypse off.
We have another question from the
There
studio
wasn't
audience.
enough global warming to kill everybody on that
Yeah.
one. All right, we got a question for the studio audience. Yes,
Ma'am.
Would you ever be willing to try a cider on the show?
we would definitely.
Funny you should mention
be
because
willing
we
to
actually
try a
are
cider on
trying
the
a
show.
cider on the show on November 15th. We're going to be trying Crispin Artisanal Reserve.
Crispin Artisanal.
The question from studio audience was, will we ever be willing to try cider on the show? And the answer is we actually already have it planned.
Yeah. So what is that? 2 weeks from tonight? 3 weeks from tonight?
3 weeks from tonight.
3 weeks from tonight. We'll try that. I'm looking forward to it. I've never been a huge cider fan, but I've never been an opponent of cider. I just don't like sweet things. That's why I married my wife.
I've had this particular cider, and I was thoroughly impressed, which is why I wanted to try it on
All
the
right.
show.
Well, if it's recommended by people who have similar taste to me, then I'm good with that. It's
So
kind of like
we'll
movies,
find
right?
some of those people and ask them.
Yeah. It's kind of like movies, though. Like the University of Oklahoma newspaper. I used to always look at their movie reviews, and whatever they told me to go watch, I would watch
Stay
the other
home.
movies, and they were awesome. Everything they
Great.
hated were great.
Great.
So, find people of similar or opposite tastes, you're in good shape.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So from all of us here at Dogleg Brewery, we would like to remind you that we are not professionals.
So please try this at home.
Oh God, that is awful.